Great. All right. So, welcome everybody. I'm Jillian, founder of Sharks4Kids, and we're here for another jawsome Google Hangout at the Bimini Biological Field Station. We've moved outside today because it's actually a really nice day here in the Bahamas, and we're joined by a few classrooms, so we'll go ahead and introduce them in just a minute, but our team here is, I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll introduce you to our very special guest that is helping us today on our live Google Hangout.
Hey guys, I'm Anthony. I'm the outreach coordinator out here at the Sharklab. So my job is essentially helping make sure these things are set up for you guys, and that we have daily tours offered, as well as just really any kind of public outreach. I also get to work with a lot of the with a lot of the schools here on the island. So it's a lot of fun doing the education stuff, but I also get to participate in a lot of the research. So it's really kind of the best of both worlds that I get to do.
Hey guys, my name's Emily. I'm from Canada, but I'm one of the assistant managers here at the Bimini Biological Field Station. So my main job here is to help manage the volunteers, all the applications that we get for volunteers that want to come intern here, as well as managing the research and getting to help out with the research that happens here at the lab. But getting out in the field is my favorite thing, so I try to do that as much as possible.
Hey, I'm Rose. I'm from England. I'm a volunteer here, so I get to do all the fun activities and with the research. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it.
All right, so we said we're here at the Sharklab, and the Sharklab has been here since 1990. We're on the South Island of Bimini in the Bahamas. We're actually only about 50 miles from the state of Florida, and there's lots of amazing sharks here. The Bahamas is considered the shark diving capital of the world. So along with some of the species we're going to talk about today, we get to interact and see and swim with a lot of them. And the research being done here has been featured on lots of television shows, lots of incredible science, and things that we actually know about sharks are because of the work that's been done here. So what we'll do today is we're going to actually show you a little bit of what shark science looks like. So what does that mean? When people are studying sharks, what's one thing that they actually do? Because there's a lot of amazing shark science that happens, and it's very different all around the world. We're going to talk about some of the work that's done right here. And our special guest today is this friend. This is a nurse shark, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about this specific shark. We're going to teach you a bit about the anatomy, the parts of the body, because it makes it kind of unique. If you look, this shark looks probably more like a catfish to you guys than an actual shark, right? But they are, and sharks are incredibly diverse. So we'll talk a little bit about that, this particular shark, and sort of some of its features and characteristics. And we'll take you through what's called a workup. This is the data collection process. This is how we get specific information from the animal. It's kind of like when you go to the doctor's office and get a checkup. Right, so but before we do that, we're going to introduce our classrooms that are joining us live. So when we say your class, if you guys just want to unmute your microphone and give a big hello. All right, so first up, and I see we're missing a couple, so hopefully, do we have Mr. England's grade 5 students from Farmington, Missouri?
Do I want to say hello?
All right, hi guys, thanks for joining us. All right, do we have Mr. Bogart's grade 2 students at South Point Elementary in Miami, Florida? Doesn't look like they were able to connect. All right, how about Mrs. Ruffcorn's grade 5 students at West Harrison Community School? Hi. Hi, thanks for joining us. All right, what about Mrs. Spiegel's grade 4 students in Ardmore, Pennsylvania? Maybe not. All right. How about Mr. Coleman's grade 2 students in Holden, Maine? All right. And I'm from Maine, so that's great. I love that we have a class from Maine. All right. And last but not least, Mrs. Harmon's kindergarten class in Heartland, Wisconsin.
Hi, guys.
Hi. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. All right. So we're going to go ahead and start. Are we going to do the anatomy first? All right. So Rose and Emily are going to talk to you a little bit about the parts that this shark has and how it sort of helps it survive in its particular habitat.
Okay. We can start at the head and work our way down.
Yeah.
Hey guys, so we're going to tell you about the features of the shark today. So sharks have 5 senses like us, but they also have one extra one that we don't have. So to start off with, you can see here that sharks have eyes, and this is to see, just at the front. They also can smell, and they do this using their nose. They have 2 little black dots. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see them just at the front here. Like us, to taste, they have teeth and a tongue.
You can see in their mouth. Oh, can we wipe off this, please?
And they also have these little white things here called baubles, and these are to sense electromagnetic fields in the water column.
They also have a very special 6th sense that we don't have, and it's called the ampullae of Lorenzini, and this helps them feel electrical pulses in the water to be able to feel their prey items that might be hiding under the sand or anything like that. So if you think about a hammerhead, one of its favorite prey items is actually stingrays, which can bury themselves in the sand. And they might not be able to see or smell them, but they're able to use these little ampullae of Lorenzini, which are these little pores underneath their snout and around their mouth that are filled with gel. And they use these to be able to sense the electric pulses that the heartbeat of the ray could give off in the water.
So another really cool thing about the nurse shark is that they have a very flat body, and the fins are further back, as you can see here. And this is due to the environment that they live in. So nurse sharks are usually found living under ledges. So this type of body allows them to shuffle and squeeze under the ledges where they like to live. They also have, their skin is made of dermal denticles, and this gives them a rough texture. So it's kind of like when you feel sandpaper. So if you guys, maybe when you go home, get some sandpaper, that is like what a shark will feel like. Yeah, so they have different fins. So this one here at the end is their caudal fin. And then we have these two at the front, which is the pelvic fin, pectoral fin, sorry. And then we have their dorsal fins at the top. So they have a first dorsal and a second dorsal. And then they have their pelvic fins, which are the ones at the back here.
This little anal fin. And you'll see the dorsal fin on the nurse shark is placed much further back than most sharks. And that's also because what Rose mentioned, so it can fit under ledges, so it can hide when it's a little juvenile, so it can protect itself. And also because its prey items typically live under these ledges, such as like conchs and lobster and crabs and food like that.
So should we find out to see what sex the shark is? So we've got a boy or a girl today. So this can be used by looking at claspers, is that now? Yep. Yeah. So this is a boy.
These are little claspers. These are little finger-like protrusions that come off of here. Ooh. And if it was a girl, it wouldn't have any of these. All right.
Awesome.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk to you guys a little bit about the tags. You may have heard people say, oh, we're tagging sharks, or the shark was tagged. So what does that actually mean? So Anthony is going to talk to you about some of the tags that are actually used here in Bimini, including on this specific shark.
All right, guys. So as we mentioned, we research sharks out here. We're called the Sharklab for a reason. And all we really want to do is understand how sharks use their natural environment and how many sharks we get here. So we call that a population assessment. And we really use a wide variety of different tags to help us figure that out. Now, the most common tag we use, all the way from our small little juvenile nurse sharks all the way up to our 3-meter tiger sharks, is one called a pit tag. I'm going to move a little bit closer so you guys can see it a little bit better. But this is what a pit tag looks like. It's just that little rice-sized tag that's a microchip that will actually just stick right under the skin of the sharks, so that what we can do is take our special reader over here. We'll turn it on first. Then we'll try to put the reader right over the tag. We'll hear a beep, and you guys might be able to see on the screen there that it says a certain combination of numbers and letters. And that just really gives us the identity of the shark we've got on the side of the boat or in our hands. Okay? This is a very, very important tag to us because every time we put out a new one, it means this is a new shark that we've never seen before. So it's always really, really cool to see us put one of these in a new shark we've never seen before. Now, a tag we'll use on some of our bigger sharks is something we call a dart tag or a KC tag, and that's this tag right here. So what you guys will notice is that down here at this end, there's a little metal tip that's our dart that will actually stick under the skin of the shark. And then in between that and the little capsule on there is some really strong monofilament, like fishing line that helps attach it to the dart. And then we have this capsule down here.
Just show them right where it goes.
Yeah. So where we normally put it on our bigger sharks is just right under the dorsal fin there. Can you guys see that? All right. But the important thing we like to point out is if you guys look closely at the capsule, you can see there's some markings in there, and actually the numbers say 417. And that's how we're able to identify who our sharks are as well. If we don't have our magical reader here, we can just look at those tags if we're swimming next to the shark, and we can figure out exactly who it is. Now, one of my favorite projects and my favorite tags is this orange one right here. Okay, it's an acoustic tag, and it's kind of what it sounds like. It sends out an acoustic signal in the water that can be picked up by one of about 50 receivers we have all around Bimini. Okay, now we'll actually put these inside the shark, so we'll make a small little cut, slip the tag in, and then we'll suture them right back up. And the great thing about sharks is they'll heal over really quickly. Okay, but back to my receivers, we have them all over the island. We have them in different types of habitat at different depths. So what we're able to see, and Jillian's going to show you guys.
I don't know if you can. I might not be able to see it.
No, it's not.
It's. Let's see. It's just the angle of the sun, I don't think.
Yeah, it's a little rough to see it today. But anyways, what she was trying to show you guys is these tags will be picked up by those receivers, and we can then see what type of species likes hanging out in different environments we have our receivers in, and see where our sharks are just spending a lot of time in what we call habitat preferences. So just to give you guys an example, we have Caribbean reef sharks out here that we'll put them in. Those sharks absolutely love spending time on the reefs that are just south of the island. Or our great hammerheads will hang out over on the western side near the Gulf Stream where it's really deep for them. And might provide them some protection, but then what we'll also see is they'll come right around towards the backside of our island and hopefully try to find some food in the sand flat. So we're starting to see them pick all these absolutely different places that really helps them thrive and survive out here on Bimini. And what we're starting to see is Bimini is an extremely, extremely important place for sharks in general. Awesome. I believe next we're going to work up the shark for you guys. So we're going to show you just exactly the type of data we take, why it's important. I told you we put these tags in to identify them, but there are other things that can tell us, like taking their measurements, or just some of the other cool things the girls will show you in a sec.
Yeah.
Handle.
Yeah, here, I can hold it. Yeah, if you want to tilt we might want to tilt the computer. All right, so once the shark is caught, and there's different techniques that are used, sometimes fishing poles, sometimes long lines, drum lines, net. No matter where you are in the world, this is the most common practice. People need to collect data from the shark. So once you have it, it's secured either in a tub like this, in the boat, or next to the boat. You're going to start with the workup. All right, so we'll have the shark. So here we go. The shark for you.
Okay. So we're going to do two different measurements today. One is going to be the pre-caudal length, which is right before the caudal fin that Rose pointed out earlier, and one is the total length. So that's the total length of the shark from the very tip of the snout to the very end of the tail. Okay, so the pre-cuddle length of this little shark is 50 centimeters.
And all of this data is recorded. So Rose, who's off camera right now, is actually writing this down. So we have this important data as a base for learning about this shark.
And the total length of the shark is 68 centimeters. So it's a pretty tiny shark. Yeah, we'll also do the girth of the shark. So that's like similar to measuring your waistband of your pants, if you were to think about it that way. So we take it around the belly of the shark and right into its armpits, and then we measure its waist. So this shark is 24 centimeters around its belly. So that's the girth measurement for the shark. So, like Anthony mentioned, we use little pit tags to identify our sharks here in Bimini, and I believe this shark has already been captured before, so it already has a pit tag. So we can use the pit tag reader that Anthony showed you before, and we can actually scan this shark and see its pit tag. So you guys can see right here, this is the code for this specific shark, which is really cool. And then anytime this shark is captured again, we can use this pit tag reader. Sorry guys, we live right beside an airport. And we can identify our shark, which is really cool, and it will last the lifetime of this shark. Some other things we need to do when we capture a shark is take a sample for DNA, and we take a sample for isotope. So how we do that is we take a little fin clip from the trailing edge of the fin of the shark. All right, there we go. And then we put the DNA in this little vial. And then it gets sent away to a lab to be analyzed. And then we can make what you guys would hear of as like a family tree. We can do that for all of our sharks in Bimini. So we're able to see who's related to who in Bimini. So all the nurse shark siblings, who's their parents, their grandparents, or aunts or uncles. And we can match up all the relatedness of the nurse sharks in Bimini, which is super cool. We also take an isotope sample, which has already actually been taken from the fin of the nurse shark. You can see this little clipping that was taken, and that lets us know the type of habitat and the type of prey that the nurse sharks like to feed on and where they like to live. That's super cool. All right.
And we've already noticed that it's a boy, so that would be noted down. And a couple other quick things while we have the shark, like when you're doing your workup, is you would note the health of the animal. Does it have any bite marks, any scratches, any injuries? It's good to know. And also, if you notice on this shark wall right here, if you guys have probably heard that sharks have to stay swimming to stay alive. Now, this nurse shark, if you watch, see if it's going to pause for a minute. It might not. It can swim along the bottom, but they can actually do what's called buccal pumping. So other sharks have to move forward to let the water come in through their mouth in order to get the water to pass the gills. Which you see right here on the side of the shark's head. These are, and you can see them moving, right? So when they're underwater, they're pumping. Now, nurse sharks, lemon sharks, tiger sharks, they can all actually pump the water in over their gills. They kind of suck it in and move it across, so they don't actually have to swim to stay alive. So not every species has to do that. And this is one of the ones. And this little shark is part of the research here, and it's actually in a semi-captive pen out back. And if you have ever seen cows or pigs or sheep in a field with fence, it's kind of like that, but it's in the ocean. And these little sharks will be in there. Oh, you can see it right now. It's laying on the bottom, and it's breathing. All right, so you can see the gills. Maybe it's pumping. It's breathing. All right, so it's pushing the oxygen over the gills, and it's going to swim again. Great, so the pen allows the lab to keep a few sharks out there for students to learn, the volunteers to learn how to safely handle a shark, and also for visitors to come learn about the sharks and the work being done here. So it's great for them to be able to teach other people about the sharks, why they're important, and the work being done here. All right, so once that data process is complete, the animal would be released. Right, and then hopefully it's caught again, and maybe we can see, has it grown, or is it in a new area? Maybe this nurse shark decides to swim to Florida, or some of the hammerheads have swum all the way up to Virginia. Right? So all these tags and this base information we collect then helps us learn growth rates. So how quickly does the shark grow? How old is it? What does it eat? Is its family in the area? All really, really important things. And we collect all this, not just in the lab, but people who are studying sharks all around the world collect this data because the more you know about an animal, the easier it is to help protect it, to have laws put in place for better protection. And so all of this isn't just because we love sharks and it'll be really fun to go grab them and tag them. It's really, really important for conservation efforts in order to understand what these sharks need for people to be able to help them. All right, I think that is it for the workup. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to rotate through and let you guys do some questions. So I think we're going to start, if Mr. Coleman's class is still here, we'll start with you guys because I know you have to leave pretty soon. Right, do you want to send the iPad? Is Mr. Coleman's class still with us?
Yep.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Do we have any good questions? Any good questions? Okay, Kate.
How many sharks have you found?
How many sharks have you found? That's a good question.
Thousands over the years. Probably thousands over the years because the lab's been here for almost 26 years. So that's a really long time, and that's a lot of sharks. So thousands and thousands of sharks and quite a range of species.
Sorry, guys, I'm just trying to turn up the volume a little bit so we can hear you guys.
Any other questions? Yes.
Why are sharks important?
Why are sharks so important?
Yeah, sure. So if you think of the food chain, you guys have probably maybe talked about food chains. And all the different animals, whether they live on land or in the ocean, fit into these food chains. And animals near the top, they eat other animals below them in the food chain. So sharks, some of them are apex predators. Some of them are at the top of the food chain, not all of them. But no matter where they exist in the food chain, they eat other animals below them. Right? So this helps keep the populations of the other animals balanced. There's not too many of them. And if you think of the ocean, there's only so much space and food and energy for so many organisms. So if you remove all the sharks from an area, all the animals they eat, their prey items, their populations start to go up. And they go up and up and up, and then they don't have enough food. Right? So then they start to die off. And it goes right down the system. And you'll see seagrass beds start to die, the mangroves can start to die, the coral reefs. So the ocean actually gets sick. Sharks also eat injured, sick, dying animals, or dead, which keeps the ocean clean and keeps disease from spreading. So healthy, clean, balanced oceans exist really because of these animals. And healthy oceans are important for all of us. We're really lucky. We're right near the ocean, but even for you guys that are nowhere near it, you rely on every single day, right? Some of the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food you eat comes from the ocean. We're all connected to it every day. So sharks are really, really important because they keep the oceans healthy for all the animals, but also for people on land. So they're really, really important. Great question. Do you guys have one more question?
Okay. Right at then. Yeah.
What ocean do you find most of the sharks in?
What oceans do you find most of the sharks in the world?
That is a very, very good question. You know what? The coolest thing about all of the sharks in all the oceans of the world is we keep finding more and more every year. So, one might say that maybe in the Pacific Ocean, because it's the biggest ocean out there, so there's probably a lot of stuff that we've never seen there because we haven't explored it yet. But we don't know that because even here in the Atlantic Ocean, where we're next to, or even places like the Gulf of Mexico, we find new things every year. So it's really hard to say where we find the most of them, but one of the things we do know is that they are everywhere, and like Jillian said, they're important everywhere they are because they help control the ocean and the environment. That's a very good question. I can tell you, in the entire world, we have over 500 different types of sharks. And that's a lot.
Great question. All right, Mr. Coleman, we'll do one more because I know you guys have to go. So we'll do one more, and then we'll rotate to our next class.
Yeah. All right. Right up in there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Do you know how sharp their teeth are?
How sharp are sharks' teeth?
Oh, that's a good question. So it's different for different species of sharks, actually. So not all sharks actually eat fish or need sharp teeth to eat their fish. So there's actually sharks like the whale shark and the basking shark, which are the biggest sharks in the world, that actually filter feed kind of like a whale does, or certain types of whales do. So they actually suck in plankton through their mouth instead of using sharp teeth like you'd imagine with a great white to tear apart food. Our nurse shark here also too, Jillian's going to show you, they don't have super sharp teeth. They actually eat their food in a different method. So they actually like to suck in their food, kind of like a vacuum, and then they use their teeth, which are more like crushing plates, to crush shells and stuff like that instead of using sharp teeth to tear them apart. But then there's sharks like maybe great whites and lemon sharks that have sharper teeth. So it's a variety of different sharpnesses and different ways of using their teeth, actually.
Great question. All right, can we go to, thank you, Mr. Coleman's class, for all those wonderful questions. We're going to go now to Mr. England's grade 5. Do you have some questions for us?
Good morning. Yes, we do. We have a few questions. Oh, sorry. Wait you out. Sorry, guys. Can you hear us?
Hi, my name is Gage. I'm in Mr. England's class in Missouri, and my question is, do sharks show aggression towards each other, and if so, how often?
Absolutely, sharks show aggression towards each other because sometimes if you think about it, there are no easy kills really for sharks. And even if they find something that's hard to eat, right, they may have to fight other sharks for that animal. All right, so if there's only so much fish and they're hunting, so absolutely, and the aggression might be towards, it's usually because of food. You will often see that. Also, if you're in a certain area and there's food, so it does happen. It's not all the time. Like sharks don't just swim around super aggressive towards each other, but there are reasons where that would be appropriate for them to be able to, mostly to be able to get their food.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Alexis. Is a whale shark a whale or a shark?
So a whale shark is actually a shark. It's just a really big shark that likes to filter feed instead of preying on like bigger fish or like marine mammals. So it's definitely a shark. It has a cartilaginous body, so it doesn't have any bone, just like the rest of our shark species here. And it needs its gills to be able to breathe, unlike whales who need like air to breathe. So it's actually a shark. It just doesn't really look like a shark, but sharks can come in all different shapes and sizes. We typically think of sharks like great whites and sharks that look sharky, I guess you could say. But whale sharks are definitely sharks, not whales.
Question. We'll do one more from your class, Mr. England, and then we'll jump to our next class.
Okay, coming up.
Hi, my name is Luke. What's the most common shark in the Bahamas?
So the most common shark in the Bahamas is the lemon shark. We do a program here called PIT, and that is when we catch 99% of the population of them. So they're really studied here, so we know a lot of information about them.
One of the cool things about the lemon sharks that Rose was talking about is when everybody thinks of sharks, we always think, oh, they're these really big sharks and they're all being studied. But one of the important things about the lemon sharks that we study and why we see them so often is that actually they're the really tiny guys. So ones that are maybe about this nurse shark size, maybe a little bit bigger. And that's one of the things about Bimini that makes it so important for them is that they use the mangroves here to essentially grow to those bigger sizes. So when Rose talks about how common they are, we see them really frequently because we spend a lot of times in the mangroves with those guys.
And the nurse shark is also really common throughout the Bahamas as well. You'll see them everywhere. They're a very prolific species. There are lots of them. So, and you'll see them all the way from babies to full-size adults, which can be up to 9, 10 feet in length. So they can be a very big shark, even though they start out pretty small. Great question. All right, can we go to, let's see who's next. I can find my list. Sorry, guys. Frozen. Don't fail me now, iPad. All right. Is Mrs. Spiegel, oh, I think Mrs. Spiegel had to leave early. So Mrs. Harmon's kindergarten class, do you guys have some questions for us?
Okay, Adam, come on up. Ask the question. Can you hear us now?
Again.
Sharks.
Do sharks eat other sharks?
Did you hear him? Do sharks eat other sharks? He wanted to know.
Absolutely. Not every shark. So they're not just mindless eating machines. They have their favorite foods. They have things they prefer. And so not every shark eats other sharks, but species like lemon sharks, tigers, bulls, hammerheads definitely prey on other species of shark or even the same species, the same as themselves. Great question.
Just the important thing to remember with that is they're always probably going to try and go for another type of shark that's smaller than they are. So things like great hammerheads might even go for a black tip shark that only gets to about 3 feet long, and of course our great hammerheads can get up to 12, 13 feet long, no problem. So it always has to be smaller than them. It just makes it a little bit easier for them. Good question.
How big?
Do you guys have one more?
Go ahead.
Tooth.
How big is a shark's tooth? Did you hear that? How big is a shark?
Yeah, the nurse shark here, its teeth are really, really tiny, and they look like pencil tips. But something like a great white is going to have a much larger tooth. They're very triangular shape. So the size of the shark and also the type of the shark is really how it varies. So they range in size from very, very small to several inches tall and several inches wide. But the funny thing is the whale shark, which is the largest shark, has very, very tiny teeth. So it doesn't actually have big teeth. They're tiny, tiny, and kind of like the nurse shark, little pencil tip teeth. So the biggest sharks don't always have the biggest teeth. Great question. We'll do one more, and then we'll go to another class.
Mason?
Do sharks eat squid?
Do sharks eat?
Yeah. So sharks are pretty opportunistic feeders, and what that means is they'll pretty much take any meal that they can get. So the ocean is a very big place. So a lot of the times it might be hard for sharks to find food. They'll pretty much eat anything that they can find, and sometimes that might mean squid. So some of our juvenile lemon sharks really like squid. We'll take them up and we'll feed them squid sometimes just to see, just so we can see how they feed and show them to our visitors. But they pretty much like anything that they can find in the ocean.
All right. Do we have Mrs. Roughcorn's grade 5 with us?
Yep, we are here.
Great. All right. So let's go ahead. If you guys have more questions, we can do.
Yep, we sure do.
Hi, my name is Mia, and are any sharks in the endangered species list?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, they are. About 1/4 of all sharks, rays, and skates, so skates and rays are sort of the cousin, the flat sharks, if you will. About 1/4 of them are threatened with extinction. So yes, many of them, including our great hammerheads that we have here in Bimini, are on the endangered species. They're considered on the endangered species list, and the IUCN Red List, which is kind of the global list for kind of the status or how sharks or particular animals are doing. They're also listed as endangered on that. So unfortunately, a lot of sharks, yes, fall into that category.
How fast can a shark swim while chasing its prey?
That's a great question. And again, it depends on the type of shark and what they like to eat. So like we said, things like our nurse sharks like eating conch, or lobster, which don't move very quickly, and actually these guys will just sit there and wait for them and just suck them right in when they get a little too close. But on the other side, we have things like mako sharks, which can swim between 45 to 60 miles an hour as their top speed. And of course, they're chasing things down like baby marlin or sailfish or even some delicious things like tuna. So it really, really depends on the shark. Things like tiger sharks may not be the quickest, but they also have to be pretty agile and turn on a dime, because things like sea turtles, which they like to eat, can turn quickly as well. So it all really just depends on what their favorite type of food is. Now, that being said, if they're going to, you know, sometimes they might not even need to be that fast. Their food might just be floating there and not even be alive. So it really, really depends on what they can find and what they like to chase down. Good question.
Hi, my name is Chance. How many sharks can you catch in a day?
That's a really good question. So it really kind of depends on what we're doing and how we're fishing for our sharks. Recently, we set something called long lines, trying to catch tiger sharks, and in 24 hours, we caught, what was it?
13.
13 of them. But other times when we do our really important pit project, where we'll set out these big nets looking for our juvenile lemon sharks, in a matter of a night, I think in one net last year, we caught about 60 lemon sharks. So it all really depends, but when we do catch 60 lemon sharks, it's a lot of work for us, and we have to be constantly driving boats back and forth between our nets and where we put them in the pens, and then drive them to where they need to be worked up. So sometimes it can get pretty crazy out here with the sharks we get. Other times we don't catch anything.
All right, we'll do one more question and we'll hop to our next class.
What do you got? One more? Come. You're okay.
Hello, my name is Gunnar, and how many teeth does a shark have?
Well, it really depends on the type of shark. Remember we said there's over 500 different species, so something like a whale shark will have about 300 in its mouth, even though it doesn't really use them. Other sharks anywhere from 50 to 100, so it really just depends on the type of shark. And you have to think as well, they have rows, so they don't just have the one row like we have, they'll have multiple rows behind, because when a tooth falls out, another one moves forward. So sharks will have thousands and thousands of teeth in their lifetime, because they're actually really, really important, not only for the animal to kind of tear up its food or crush it, but also oftentimes to catch their food, because they don't have hands or fishing poles. So over the course of their life, they're going to have thousands and thousands of teeth, but the amount at one time really varies from species to species. Great question. All right, we're going to go back to Mr. England's class. You guys have a few more questions. Mr. England, are you still with us?
Yeah, we're kind of in transition here. You guys, anybody have a question? Right here.
Yeah.
All right, we stand right here, buddy.
Hi, my name is Layton. How deep can a shark dive?
It really depends on the type of shark. Some sharks just live in deep water, thousands of feet deep. There's also just a species of deep sea sharks that have these amazing adaptations to survive down there. Something like a velvet belly lantern shark, which is really small, but they have glow-in-the-dark bellies, right? Because it's light that attracts other little fish to come in. There's not as much food down there. It's almost like a desert. Less food because there's less light. So some sharks spend their whole life down there. Other sharks dive very deep. Great whites can dive deep. Makos. It really just depends on the type of shark. And if their food source is diving deep, then they may follow it. Things like Greenland sharks, which live in very cold Arctic waters, they can dive very deep, but also be found in the surface. So it really depends on the type of shark and if they're following a food source. And if their food source is moving up and down in the water, how deep they can actually dive. But many species are found in very, very deep water and spend their whole life there.
Thank you.
One more question?
What type of diet do sharks have?
What type of diet?
Again, this can depend on the species. So the nurse shark here really likes to eat conch and lobster. And then some of the sharks may eat other sharks. They may eat larger fish. Again, it depends on the species.
You guys have one more?
We have one more. Ian?
Hello, my name is Ian. What is the dangerous shark you've ever catched?
In all honesty, I believe it's the way that you handle the shark when you catch it, whether it makes it dangerous or not. So it's kind of in our hands if the shark is dangerous. So we catch all different types of sharks, from nurse sharks to tiger sharks to actually foot tags and hammerhead sharks as well. But it's the way we handle it that makes it dangerous or not. So we know how we need to handle the shark in order to make it safe for the shark and safe for ourselves. So it's actually not that dangerous in the way that we do it. But we've trained our volunteers and our staff very well in order to be ready for these kinds of situations.
All right. So we're going to go back to Mrs. Harmon's kindergarten class.
Come out.
Do sharks eat fish?
Do sharks eat fish?
Yes, that's her question.
Absolutely. And different sharks eat different kinds of fish. They have their favorite foods just like we do. The different sharks will actually prey upon something, maybe small fish if they're babies. Great whites might like to eat tuna before they start eating seals. So absolutely, sharks do enjoy eating fish. And if you think about it, fish are an animal, but there's lots and lots of in the ocean. So if you're a shark, eating fish is pretty important, and it's a pretty good idea.
And it's tasty.
And it's tasty. All right. You guys have another one?
Where's the title?
Mr. England, I'm going to ask you to just mute your microphone because it keeps flashing back. So if you don't mind muting that for a minute, that would be great. Thank you. And then Mrs. Harmon, if you guys have another question. Mrs. Harmon, did we lose you? All right, so we're going to go to Mrs. Ruffcorn's class. And again, Mr. England, if you don't mind muting your microphone, we do keep flashing back to your class. We'll do another lap around to your class, but we're going to go ahead, Mrs. Ruffcorn, if you have some more questions from your class.
The tags that you folks use to tag your animals, are they worldwide recognized tags? If somebody else comes across your shark in another part of the world, do they read the same data that your machines read?
That is a terrific question. And it depends on where you are in the world. As with a lot of things with the different species of sharks, it depends. But when it comes to projects, of course, the important thing that scientists do want to do is try to use tags that could work with other groups. Now, the one tag I showed you guys, our KC tag, that little dart tag, actually, yeah, that Emily's got, actually comes from NOAA, which is in the United States. And, of course, we're in the Bahamas, but we still use these tags because we know our sharks will go spend some time off of the east coast of the United States. But also, one reason why we use those tags as well as our pit tags is because sometimes certain research groups don't have the readers that can read the pit tags. When it comes to our acoustic tags, those tags can only be picked up by certain receivers. So we do have certain groups that we can work with, but also it's sometimes our sharks might be spending time where they don't necessarily are able to read our tags. So that's a really good question, and of course it's something we always try to work towards to try and get data as much as possible, which is again why we put so many tags in these guys, is so we can try to get information from all over the place.
And some of the larger tags that we didn't really talk about, the satellite tags that go on the sharks, which are much larger, they actually send information. They transmit through an antenna up from the fin. It's used particularly on species that spend at least some of their time at the surface. So when this fin breaks the surface, it's going to send information, and you can actually kind of almost live track them and see where they're going. And those type of tags, if they go to a region, because it's up to a GPS, to a satellite, you can see where they're going. But also, for some reason, if the shark was killed or caught or things, there's information, and people can get in touch with the scientists. There's always the information so that at least they can contact the people that put the tags on to try and let them know whether the shark was caught and released, or sometimes, unfortunately, if the animal was killed. Great question. You guys have another one?
Hi, my name is Gracie. And how long can sharks get?
Like how big?
Like lengthwise, what is the longest breed of shark?
The whale shark is the largest species of shark, anywhere from 45 to about 50 feet. There's been sightings that are larger. I think the largest confirmed is about 50 feet. So that's longer than your school bus. So that's a pretty large animal. And do you guys have one more?
Yes, we do.
Hi, my name is Kirsten, and how many sets of teeth does a shark have?
Well, it really depends on the shark, because they don't have just the one. Like, we have our row down here and a row up top. They have right behind them, so you can't. It's really hard to see on the nurse shark, but on something, if you've ever looked at a mouth of a shark that's kind of smiling or open, you can actually see rows right behind. So they're kind of lined up, one right behind the other, because as one comes forward, right, another one will fall out. Most sharks have about between 5 to 15 rows of teeth. That's the average. So it's quite a few teeth in the mouth at a time, and some of them may be very far back, like almost sticking out. Others are halfway, and then others are fully that front, kind of the ones that they're using. Great question. All right, so we're going to go ahead and try to go to Mrs. Harmon's class again, if you guys are with us.
Okay. Do you find bloody sharks?
Do you find bloody sharks?
Not usually. Sometimes sharks are injured when they're found. They might have a bite or a scratch, or a hook, a fishing hook might have injured them. But not really like sharks that are just really bloody. And so, unfortunately, it does happen. I mean, when people do kill sharks. People actually kill about 100 million sharks every year. So that does happen. But luckily here, most of the sharks that we're all diving with and these guys are working with are very much alive. And they might have a cut or something like that. But sharks heal incredibly quickly. If you guys cut your finger and went in the swimming pool every day, it wouldn't heal very quickly. These guys don't have to worry about that because they heal incredibly quickly. Their skin is very strong. So you might find one with a cut or small injury, but it's not going to keep it for very long. Do you guys have another question?
Go ahead. Talk. How big can sharks get?
So like we've talked about a little bit, the whale shark can get really big. I mean, they can get to 45 to 50 feet, which Jillian said earlier could be the size of a school bus. So if you guys take the school bus to where you guys are now every morning, that's how big sharks can get. And it's really cool to think about how big they can get, but it's also really cool to think about how small they can be. Some of them are so small they can just fit in the size of my hand here, even when they're full-grown adults. So it really, every shark is different, and they all have their different sizes because of the things they eat and where they live.
Great. We'll do one more for Mrs. Harmon's class.
I never got church.
Come here, Emma. Now, talk.
Do sharks have names?
Do sharks have names like you have a name, you mean?
Not really, not that we know of. So sometimes all the sharks, the tags and things that we're putting on, that's kind of a number ID. Now, because of the great hammerheads here, we're seeing the same species over and over. The lab has come up with names to help identify, because other people will see the shark and they can tell the lab, hey, you know, we saw Scylla or Medusa today, or we saw her yesterday and the day. So it helps the lab collect data, because the tags are oftentimes too small. So the divers might not see that tag number, but they can recognize the shark and use the name as an important part of data collection. So in that sense, but we've kind of given it a name versus whether they actually have a name for themselves. Great question. All right, so we're going to go through everybody one more time. So you guys want to do 2 more questions, so we'll go back to Mr. England's class for your last 2 questions. Mr. England, if you want to unmute your microphone and do a couple questions. Oh, there we go.
Get a little old, sorry.
It's okay.
My name's Caitlin, and how long can sharks live?
So it really depends. A lot of the species here, anywhere from 25 to about 40 years. Research done right at the lab actually figured out that lemon sharks kind of once thought they lived about 20 years, up to probably about 40 that we know of. They might live longer, but we know they live at least that long. Nurse sharks about 30 to 35 years. Something like a great white, anywhere from 50 to 70 years. Or the Greenland shark I mentioned earlier that lives in very deep cold water, they can live over 100 years. So again, a lot of the questions that we've talked about, it really varies from shark to shark. They're all sharks, but they're incredibly different.
Another question?
All right, do you guys have one last question?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm there. Is there a specific shark that is the longest shark?
That is a what shark?
Is the longest shark?
The longest shark. Probably a And she's thinking the longest shark. A few of the students in here are speculating it's megalodon.
Okay. Well, we'll answer the megalodon question, because we answered that the longest shark is our whale sharks. But with megalodon, megalodon probably got a lot bigger than even our whale sharks. The thing with megalodon, though, is megalodon hasn't been around for millions of years now. So he doesn't even exist anymore. You guys might have seen that on Shark Week, but all shark scientists know that megalodon doesn't exist anymore. The most we can see from him is maybe stuff in the fossils, like its teeth, which we know can get about the size of someone's hand. So right now, the only biggest shark out there is our whale shark, which, like we said, actually has the smallest teeth. So that's how we're gonna talk about megalodon. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist. I think it'd be extraordinary if it did, but that was millions of years ago.
All right, so we're going to go to Mrs. Ruffcorn's class for your last 2 questions.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Hi, my name is
Riley. Do you rehab sharks? Like, when you take them in, do you send them back out?
If you had an injured shark, would you be able to rehabilitate it at your facility and then re-release?
Yeah, so it depends on what has happened. But in the past, we have had injured sharks that we've been able to like either stitch up or just watch, because as Jillian mentioned, these sharks heal super quickly. So if it's like a cut or something like that, if we just keep it in our semi-captive pens off of our beach, which it's in the ocean, so it has all its natural environment around it, it can typically heal itself. But there have been a couple of times where we've had to help by maybe putting in a couple stitches or something like that, and then just letting the shark have time to heal. and then we can release it back into the water. So we've had some very good success stories for stuff like that, but it doesn't happen very often.
And it's not something we focus on. As we told you guys, we're a research lab, but of course we love the animals we work with, and we try to help them whatever we can, just like Emily said.
Right, you guys have one last question for us.
Hi, my name is Mason, and do sharks have a special call to another shark?
How do they communicate with
Actually,
each other?
it's not a call. Like you think of animals, you hear birds, okay? They call one to the other and talk. So sharks can communicate, but it's in a very different way. A lot of it is through physical posturing. So if you saw a dog and it was wagging its tail, that's very different than a dog that's growling. So they can communicate with different postures in the body, and they can learn from each other. Okay, they can actually teach each other. So we know that they communicate, but they don't have the ability to make an audible sound, so like a call out to each other. So again, it's one of the things that scientists are still trying to learn about, because they know that they communicate and they can teach each other and they work together. They collaboratively hunt together. So they have a way of communicating, and most of it that we know of now is through physical postures. But again, it's still questions that are being asked and being learned about, which makes sharks really exciting, because every day we're all learning something new about them, which is really remarkable. All right, thank you guys, and we're going to finish off with Mrs. Harmon's class with 2 final questions.
How many babies does a mommy shark have?
Sure. So I'll mainly just talk about lemon sharks, because that's what we know the most about. But a mom shark in a given year could have anywhere to up to like 15 or 20 pups. So it ranges, but they're pretty cute. And they can, yeah, it depends on the mom and depends on the year, but it can drop anywhere from just a couple of pups to about 15 to 20 pups a year.
And other sharks, like a Port Jackson shark, which is found in Australia, they only lay 1 egg case. So there's kind of 3 main ways that sharks give birth. Now, the lemon sharks that Emily was talking about, they actually have a little umbilical scar, like a belly button, because they're born alive, right? So those little pups. This nurse shark was in an egg case in its mum, and it hatched out, and then it was born alive. And then other sharks just lay egg cases. And the little shark will be in there, just like a chicken egg. It's got a yolk and food for the shark in a protected case. Poor Jackson sharks, they just like 1 at a time. So it very depends. Other species will have 35 to 40 pups. So it really depends on the type of shark. Again, I know we've said that a lot, but it really is the case, because these animals can be so different from one another. All right, and one last question to finish us off.
How long can they stay out of water?
How long can sharks live out of water?
That is a very, very good question. And with a lot of our answers, I feel like we sound like a broken record, but it really depends on the species. But to give you guys an idea, things like our nurse sharks here can actually spend a lot of time out of the water. There have been places elsewhere where, unfortunately, the shark was fished for and caught and left on a dock for 1 day. When they came back to it the next day, it was still alive and perfectly fine. But other sharks, like our great hammerheads or even black-tip sharks, have to always be moving to be able to breathe. So when you either hold them still or pull them out of the water for as much as 30 minutes to an hour, they're not going to make it, because it's like if someone were to put us underwater and hold us underwater for 30 minutes to an hour. We wouldn't be able to breathe at all. So it just depends on the species and how well they can handle things like stress, and really how long they can hold their breath sometimes.
All right, well, that was great. Thank you so much for joining us, all the classes that joined us today, and for your wonderful questions. If you want to know more information about the Shark Lab and the research that's happening here, how you can get involved, how you can help, you can check out www.biminisharklab.com. And if you want to learn a little bit more about what we do at Sharks4Kids, find some activities, games, videos, things like that, you can check out www.sharks4kids.com, and also find us on social media, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, because we're always posting updates about what we're doing. So thank you guys so much for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Thank Thank you.
Welcome.
A parking.
Hey, how are you?
Bye.